I still remember the jolt of surprise when my wife first told me about her past threesomes with her best friend and that friend's husband years before I ever entered the picture. We were dating at the time, not even engaged yet, and she wanted me to know up front. She was open and matter of fact, explaining that it was just a phase, an experiment she tried in her early 20s, a time when she was more adventurous. It was never really about girl on girl stuff. It was more about sharing the friend's boyfriend, now husband. She said she'd only done it a few times, discovered she wasn't really into it, and that was that. End of story. At least that's how I filed it away in my head. It happened well before she and I got together, so it was easy enough to accept as a purely past affair. She's never hidden it, and I've never had a reason not to trust her. Still, I'd be lying if I said it was comfortable. There was always something, maybe jealousy or insecurity, lurking whenever we were in the same room with that couple. I'd see the husband, and my mind would wander to the fact he'd once been inside my wife. And yes, it stung. But she never gave me cause to fear anything was still going on. She assured me she stopped for a reason. She wasn't that attracted to him, and the novelty of the experience wore off. As time passed and we settled into our own marriage, kids, careers, the everyday hustle, I learned to live with that knowledge. She's a grown woman. She had a life before me. Who am I to judge? However, last weekend the topic came crashing back when we were all hanging out. Her best friend, somewhat tipsy, blurted out something about how they used to have so much fun. My wife quickly shut her down, but I was left with the impression that there'd been some behind-the-scenes chatter. Later that night, my wife confirmed that her friend and her husband had asked if we'd be interested in picking up old habits. Just, adding me into the mix. Or, at the very least, they wanted to do something sexual with my wife again, maybe with me watching. Hearing that was like a punch in the gut. They were basically fantasizing about hooking up with the mother of my kids while I stood on the sidelines. My wife insisted it wasn't a big deal. She told me they'd asked, she'd shut it down, and that was that. But how can I ignore it? For years, I've pushed down the twinge of jealousy, telling myself it was ancient history, that I should trust my wife and not hold her past over her. Now they're actively lusting after her again, this time with me in the picture. The mental image alone makes my skin crawl. I felt my insecurities flare up big time. On one hand, my wife has always been transparent about how that fling ended. She tried it a few times, realized she wasn't that physically attracted to the husband, and quickly lost interest. She's told me repeatedly that she doesn't find them appealing anymore, that it was just a youthful experiment, and yet they are the ones who reintroduced the idea. The husband, who once had sex with my wife, now openly wants another go, presumably with me either watching or joining. I couldn't handle it if I tried. She told me to relax, that she's not even remotely interested, and that I have nothing to worry about. But how do I not feel uncomfortable around them, knowing they're fantasizing about her, and she's politely refusing? Doesn't that mean there's tension in the room, or a ticking time bomb if they push too far? At first I considered telling her, "I'm sorry, but I don't want you hanging out with them." But I realized how unfair that might be. It's her best friend, someone she's known forever. They've traveled together, confided in each other about life, and I've never wanted to be the jealous husband who dictates friendships. Still, I can't pretend I'm fine around people who proposition my wife to relive old times. After that night, we had a serious talk. I laid it all out, my discomfort, my resentment, and how I can't just pretend this didn't happen. She was apologetic, but also insistent that I had nothing to fear. She said her friend and friend's husband are just fun people who talk a big game but respect boundaries. But from my angle, they crossed a boundary simply by asking. She suggested we address it head on, meet with them as a group, clarify that we're not interested, and see if we can put it behind us. So that's what we did. We arranged a low-key get-together, just the four of us. It was awkward from the start, My wife reiterated that we have zero interest in any sexual arrangement. They apologized for making me uncomfortable, but I could tell they didn't really see the big deal, like I was the one overreacting. I told them how I felt, that them lusting after my wife, even in a hypothetical scenario, makes me uneasy. Their response was basically that they'd always enjoyed hooking up with her before, and they assumed we might be open to exploring. They insisted they'd be happy to let me join in any capacity, which only made me feel more objectified and humiliated, as if their end goal was still to see my wife naked while I hovered in the background. My wife stepped in, telling them plainly that she's done with that chapter of her life, that she's a married mother now, not some adventurous college girl. If they can't respect that, we have no reason to hang around them anymore. After that confrontation, they left. My wife apologized for subjecting me to such an uncomfortable evening. She explained that while she used to enjoy hearing silly stories about their open lifestyle, it was purely nostalgic. She's well past that stage. She wouldn't be able to handle me with another partner either, so she understands my perspective. We decided we need a break from them. My wife won't cut off her best friend entirely, and I don't expect her to, but she's going to scale back significantly on the hangouts. No more drinks at their place, no more risking late night, let's do something crazy vibes. Maybe lunches, shopping trips, friend stuff without that husband around. That's a compromise I can live with. She assured me again that she's not attracted to them anymore. She's never going back down that road. I do believe her. She never had reason to hide anything, and she's always been honest about her disinterest. But it's not about trust in her fidelity. It's about me not wanting to see or be around people who are openly fantasizing about my wife, like she's some sexual toy to pass around. The entire dynamic makes me feel uneasy and disrespected. It's been a few days since that talk, and I'm still processing. Part of me feels a bit bad that my wife is limiting her friendship just for my comfort. Another part is relieved. I no longer have to fake small talk with a guy who's had my wife in bed and apparently still wants her. We're going to try to move on, focusing on our own marriage, raising our kids, and shutting out this new drama. At least I know now that she's got my back and making sure it doesn't escalate further. All in all, it's a messy reminder that your partner's past can resurface when you least expect it, and that sometimes even a friend's casual question can rock the boat. I'm just grateful my wife is on the same page with me about keeping them at a distance, and I'm hoping that eventually we can put this behind us and get back to normal, minus the awkward sexual proposals from her so-called best friend.